Kathy, thank you for being here with us, Kathy.
You are welcome. Let me see if I can do this now. Now, how does that look?
Looks great.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you are bundled up or covered up or have a warm drink in your hand. And we'll just relax, sit back, and enjoy. Um, I want to thank both Crystal and Linda for asking me to do this. And I hope that you will find this interesting. Like I was telling at the while ago before we got started, I was telling Linda and Sue and Crystal, a lot of people have heard of the Guion Miller roll and probably know some things about it and probably have, used it and hopefully found their family on there. But I think there's some other things that you may not know about it. And so today we're going to kind of dig a little deeper and find out some things. A lot of things are going to be in the handout that I'm going to say. So you don't need to necessarily take a lot of notes, but I just wanted to bring some facts up front to everybody to see that they would understand a little bit more about what this role really was about. And so many of the Cherokee researchers are familiar with the Dawes rolls, of course, but I thought I would kind of give you some background into the fact comparing the two rolls. So just briefly, and you probably know a lot of this, but sometimes we don't think about things as we're using them. And so that a lot of times these roles, you have to know why the role was taken to begin with. What was the purpose behind the role? And as most of us know, the purpose behind the Dawes rolls was the eventual land allotment that was going to occur for the state of Oklahoma to become a state. Whereas for the Guion Miller roll, this is a payment roll. So the bottom line is, if you're on this roll and were accepted on this roll, or they call it admitted, then your ancestor got a payment. Then, as you can see from the slide here, this is only for Cherokees. So, as you know, the Dawes rolls was for all 5 civilized tribes, but this roll is only for Cherokee, and we'll see that in a little bit. The Dawes rolls was based on later rolls, and for the Cherokees, it was the 1880 authenticated roll or later rolls, and whereas the Guion Miller roll was based on the 1851 Drennan roll. So right there, you've got 30 to 40 year period of time that you're going to be able to go back in your family history. Then as the Dawes rolls was focused on the individuals who were living in Indian Territory, whereas the Guion Miller roll, you didn't have to be living in Indian Territory to make application. And we'll find out a little bit later about the effects of that. So anyway, so let's get started, and those are just some things to think about as we're going through here. Okay, so let me try to make this go. There we go. Whoops. Okay, the Guion Miller roll was named after a gentleman named Guion Miller. And as we know that a lot of these American Indian rolls were named after the individual who was responsible for the enrollment. So just a couple of things about Mr. Miller. He was actually born in Maryland in 1864. He married a lady named Annie Tyler in 1888. He was the lawyer who was hired by the Court of Claims, which is going to be the court that eventually decides and rules in favor of the Cherokees. And one of the reasons that they hired him to do this was in 1900, they had hired him to make a payment to an Indian tribe in New York. However, the Cherokees were a larger tribe, but he did have that experience. And so I did find this article in the Muskogee paper, and I don't know if you can read it, but it was printed on June the 23rd, 1910 in the Muskogee Times-Democrat. And basically it's just giving a little information about Mr. Miller and how that he was qualified to actually complete the role here. And it just says that he is a Marylander, an attorney, and experienced in making Indian payments. 10 years ago, he was selected to make a payment similar to the one now being made here, though of no such proportion. And then he completed that payment with such, now I can't even see it here. He complete satisfaction to the government that when the tremendous task of making a roll of the Eastern Cherokees and the payment to them was decided upon, he was asked to undertake that work. And so anyway, so they just say he is a representative of the Court of Claims. And so anyway, that was right after they started making the payments in June of 1910. Okay, so now we're going to go back through here and we're going to talk about what led to this role to begin with. And I want you to, as we're going through here, I want you to notice the timeline, because I do not know why it took as long as it took for this to happen. That would probably be a huge research project for somebody to go back through and look through tribal records and newspapers and those kind of things. But I'm hitting the high spots, and you'll see as we go through here just how long this really did take to happen. So in 1835, the Cherokee Removal Treaty that was signed, as part of that treaty, the government offered to pay $5 million to the tribe if they would remove. And of course, they didn't have a lot of options. But anyway, once they did remove, by 1846, no payment had been made. So that's, 10 years. So there's the first 10 years. Even by 1851, they still hadn't made any payment. But the Cherokees prepared a roll of all the individuals who were eligible to receive payment for removal. And they were paying these people for all of the property and buildings, houses, those kind of things that they were forced to abandon in the East when they were removed. So that's the basis of the money. So they made the Drennan roll is a list of the people who were eligible to receive
Speaker is muted.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So in 1852, the Chapman roll was the actual list of the individuals who received distribution. But notice that the government took out of that distribution the cost of the removal. And the Cherokees disagreed with the amount that was taken out. So right here, we've already got a problem. And this is, you know, a number of years after they removed. And even though they did get some money, they didn't get what they felt like they should get. Now we go from 1852 all the way to 1893. Now, I have no clue what was going on in those years and why the Cherokees didn't follow through, or why I don't know whose fault it was and who was supposed to follow through or any of that stuff. But it wasn't until 1893 that the claims were referred to the Secretary of the Interior. And between 1893 and 1895, they find that, or they rule that 1,111,284.70 should be returned to the Cherokees. And this is 1895 money. So, so here we are now in 1895 already. Now we're jumping from 1895 to 1902, where they still hadn't gotten any money, but they now move the case to the Court of Claims. And 3 different suits were brought to the Court of Claims: the Cherokee Nation versus the United States, the Eastern and Immigrant Cherokees versus the United States, and the Eastern Cherokees versus the United States. So in 1905, they rule in favor of the Eastern Cherokees. So let me explain that. They're ruling in favor of the tribe by calling them the Eastern Cherokees, because that's where the claims are going to be. That's going to be where the claims are covered. So it's before removal that the claims are going to be, or that's where the money is going to cover, is all the claims before removal. However, then before anything else takes place, a year later, they modify the rule to exclude the old settlers. The old settlers were the individual Cherokees that removed voluntarily prior to the forced removal. So if your ancestor was an old settler and had removed prior to the forced removal in 1838, then they will not be included on the Guion-Miller roll. So the Guion-Miller roll is only going to be individuals who participated in the forced removal. So the bottom line is they're now approving the money. Here it is, 1906. And they're putting out word to the tribe that if you want to be a part of this payment, you have got to file a application by January 3rd. Okay, now am I unmuted again? Okay, and then in 1907, April 29th, Guion Miller is actually appointed to compile the roll. At that point, between 1907 and 1909, he reports that 45,847 applications are filed, which represent 90,000 claimants. And then in June the 10th, 1909, the court actually approves the roll. Now, later on, we're going to talk about the final numbers, but bottom line, even though this many applications were filed, only 30,000 were actually approved. So there was a lot of people that were filing applications because they didn't hear the part about you've got to have an ancestor, or just you have to be descendant of an ancestor who removed. They only heard the part about money. And so we're going to see here that there's going to be a lot of rejected applications, which are okay because they have information on them as well. So it's possible that you may have an ancestor who was not Cherokee, as I did, that applied because they heard money. They heard the word money. And but we'll look at that in a minute. So January the 5th, 1910, Miller submits the supplemental report of people who didn't meet the deadline, and the court does approve those. And so here it is, 1910, and this whole process started in 1893. Well, it really started in 1851, but the court stuff started in 1893. So here are the final figures. 30,820 people were entitled to receive payment versus that 90,000 that the 45,000 applications actually covered. And again, because you did not have to live in Indian Territory for this, there were 3,400 people that lived east of the Mississippi that were approved. But the majority of them, of course, were living west in Indian Territory, 27,000. And after it was all said and done, and you'll see the figures on that in a minute, each applicant or each individual that was entitled to payment received $133.18, which today doesn't sound like anything, and it really wasn't even in 1910. It was not going to cover the land and the property and everything that they left. Okay, so here are there's 3 or 4 things that you had to, requirements that you had to meet to be eligible to be approved for the roll. You had to be alive on 1906 and be a member of the Eastern Cherokee tribe or a descendant of the Eastern Cherokee tribal member, and not a member of any other tribe. You had to have your application in. so that you could be approved. And if you were a minor, someone had to fill out an application for you or include you on their application. And then those who had passed after 1906 had to be filed by their children or legal representative. Okay. The Miller Roll can be accessed on Fold 3. The index covers everyone who applied, not just the people who were approved. So you could actually look at the index and see if your ancestor might have applied for it. Whether they're approved or not at this point is not important. It's just that if they did apply, there may be information on their application that would be of value to you. And then the actual applications are also on Fold 3. Pardon me. So notice the titles. These the rolls were originally on microfilm. They were filmed by the National Archives. And then Fold 3 just took the microfilm and digitized it. I don't know about the Muskogee Library, but at the Tulsa Library, we have the original microfilm because we got it long before there was a Fold 3. And but it's probably easier to use Fold 3. But anyway, there's the citation for both of those things. So I'm just going to walk you through the hoops here, jumping through the hoops. Now, I did this about a month ago, so Fold 3 is notorious for changing things every hour, and their website. And so if it looks a little bit different than this today, then I apologize. But anyway, basically, you're going to go to the Fold 3 webpage, go down to the area where it says Native American and click on that. And then in the search box, you're going to just type in Guion Miller. I think you can also type in Miller Roll, but I just typed in Guion Miller and learn how to spell Guion because it's kind of different. But once you click on that, then you will come up, they will come up both the index, which is the records relating to enrollment, and then the actual application right here. And once you click on that, then you'll see the Eastern Cherokee applications. The individual we're going to look at today as an example, his name is Sterling Colston. So we're going to click on him. And right away, it goes to this little film strip, and I think most everybody is used to using that. So we're going to you can also use the arrows to go through the pages, and over on your toolbar here, you can make it larger. Here's the button to print or whatever you want to do here. So, okay, so we're going to look and see what I've got. I've blown this up, so don't worry about trying to read that. Whoop. So here it is, Eastern Cherokee applications. And notice that they received his application January the 5th, 1907, and approved. The Act of Congress approved in June of 1906, and the decree of the Court of Claims. Okay, so here we go. We're going to look at his application, or parts of his application. Notice at the top, there's his number, application number, and he was admitted. And he lived in Veneta. And then all that scribbling says the claimant's father, paternal grandparents, and uncles and aunts were enrolled by Drennan in 1851. And at that point, they lived in the Tahlequah district, and their number on the Drennan roll was 507. The Drennan roll was set up by districts. So each family has a district and a number, family number. They're by families. And so wherever your ancestor was living in 1851, if you don't know, the best thing to do is look on their Dawes enrollment card and see what district they were living in on the Dawes, and it's usually the same one. It may not be, but you could start there. But anyway, the Colston family was living in Tahlequah district in 1851. And then this there's sheets, there's all kinds of letters, there's the application, there's notes, there's all kinds of things. And this particular page gives us a list of the people who he's claiming through. So Sterling Colston is claiming through William Colston, James Colston, Daniel, and Nanny Colston, meaning these are the people who were on the Drennan roll. So fortunately, a lot of some of these applications are not all of them are typed out, but this one was, so it makes it helpful to use for a slideshow. And it's just the usual stuff: your name, where do you live, and the date and place of birth. So he was born in 1852. Lives in Veneta. Now, this is telling us, this is kind of funny. He evidently knows everybody imaginable in his family. So he goes to great detail telling the on this application, telling the Miller Roll people who in the whole Cherokee nation that he's related to. And he just goes on, and this is my first cousin, and this is my third cousin once removed, and on. But it says an heir to my father, William Colston, and grandfather, Daniel Colston, and grandmother, Nanny Colston, nee Wolf. So right there, you've got his father, his grandfather, and his grandmother, and her maiden name. And then he goes on, my aunts and my uncles and my cousins and even all these Indian names and all kind. I mean, he just goes on and on. So I can't guarantee you that your ancestor will have all of this information, but you know, possible. Okay, so anyway, after he does all that, this question says, by what right do you claim? And then he starts off again. I'm an heir to my father, my grandfather, and he does the same, basically the same kind of stuff. So here he goes again. He's got all these people on here. But then after he goes through all that, then, are you married? Yes. Name of your wife. How old is she? Give the name of your father and mother and your maiden name and her maiden name rather. So the name of my father is William Colston, The name of my mother is Nellie Colston, and her maiden name is Runnels. Where were they born? And down here at the very bottom, when did they die? So he's got both their birth and death information for his parents. And then there's his grandparents. Where were they born? Tennessee. It says list your brothers and sisters. Well, evidently he didn't have any brothers and sisters, but if he would have, then there would be all of his brothers, your applicant's brothers and sisters, the year they were born, and if they were deceased, what year they died. And then this is the name of his father's. Remember, he's applying through his father. This is his father's brothers and sisters, and when they died. So right there, there's all of his aunts and uncles. And then it says, have you been enrolled by land or other benefits? And he said, I've received land on the Dawes rolls, which he should have. And then this is the one that I think is really interesting. Give the full English and Indian names, if possible, of the paternal and maternal ancestors back to 1835. Well, he doesn't have to go too far. My grandfather, Daniel Colston, was in charge of one of the detachments that brought the Eastern Cherokees to Cherokee Nation in 1836. How about that? So his grandfather led one of the detachments, one of the removal detachments. So that right there should put him in the right place and eligible to meet the requirement of somebody back to 1835. And then this is just two witnesses that have known him, and they sign that. This is just like a lot of these applications that have witnesses, and when they sign the papers and in front of the notary and this and that, the affidavit. Then these are a couple of letters that were included in his file, in his application. And I'm not going to read all of it, but he's basically, once again, he's going, hey, I left somebody out of my application, and let me add another couple of 3 people to that list of all these people. My relative, Eliza Andre Nee Colston, is a double first cousin. I mean, he just can't let go of it. He's got to tell them all of his family. Excuse me. I'm going through. And then he goes through, here's another letter. And enclosed, please find a list I wish to add to my original application. And he tells all of those people. So he's just, he's just full of information. Here's somebody killed at Fort Gibson, a first cousin to my grandfather. And he just has all kinds of stuff. And then this one was February 17th, 1910. Now remember, they received his application in January of 1907. And some of this is faded, so I've transcribed it here. Special Commissioner of the Court of Claims, please let me know if Sterling Henry Colston name appears on the Eastern Cherokee roll, and if accepted, who was the card of acceptance sent to? Please let me know at once, as he is deceased, and I am his widow, and I've never have heard anything of it. And here's Clementine. And she's writing in February of 1910. They're not going to make payment until June, but she's wanting to know if he was accepted or not. But he's deceased already. So he wrote all that stuff out about all of his family and kept sending it in and sending it in. And so sometime before all of those, from the time that those letters were sent in to February of 1910, he passed away. And she's trying to, because she's trying to find out what happened to his application. Okay, so that was an accepted or approved application. Now we're going to look at the same application, but this one is a rejected application. And this is a great-great-grandfather of mine that lived in the area in North Georgia where the Cherokees originally lived. And he was definitely not a Cherokee, but he thought he might be able to get some money, so he made application. So here we go. His name is Ezekiel Cardell. Where do you live? Walker County, Georgia. And I think it's Lafayette is how they pronounce it. When and where you were born, March 1841 in Lumpkin County. And how do you claim? My mother. Okay, so he's saying his mother was Cherokee. Well, she's not, but anyway, he said she was. Are you married? Yes, Mary Cardell. And then here we go. Now, so again, he's not eligible for to be on this roll, but he is answering the same questions that Sterling Colston answered about his ancestors. So now he starts on his parents and grandparents. So again, he is my my great-great-grandfather. And so with him, he would give me my third great-grandfather and my fourth great-grandfather and grandmother from just the information that he's filled out on this application. Given name of your father and mother and your mother's basically maiden name. Jeremiah Cardell, Mary Magdalene Wisenhunt Cardell. So her maiden name was Wisenhunt. Where were they born? So now we have some birth information. In Habersham or Lumpkin County, Georgia. He's not real sure. Where did they live? In 1851. They lived in Walker County, Georgia. And then when did they die? So his father died in December of 1874, and his mother died, it looks like, 1875. Then name all of your brothers and sisters. So here he's naming all of his brothers and sisters with their birth date, and 2 are deceased. And then these last 3 are still living. And then it says, name your grandparents. So he says Stephen Cardell. So there's his grandfather. He's not sure what his mother's people are. And where were they born? He doesn't know that either. Pardon me. Now, where did they reside in 1851? Meaning his grandparents. And he said that by 1851, they were deceased, both dead. And then all of these other questions about their children, and he doesn't know. This either says don't know or unknown. So he doesn't know any of that stuff, which would be nice, but he doesn't know. And then it says, give the paternal and maternal ancestors back to 1835. And that to me looks like it says Adam Whisenhunt, but here it's saying giving a maiden name before she married. So I'm not exactly sure what that says, but I think that says Whisenhunt. But this is down here. He, and in the remark section, it's kind of hard to read, but I've got it transcribed here. So he makes application in March March of 1907. But it says, it is impossible for me to remember all the facts and circumstances, as my father moved from Lumpkin County, Georgia, where I was born, when I was 2 or 3 years old. So he's saying, I don't remember any of this because I was only 2 or 3 years old. But bottom line was, he was not eligible to even apply, and of course did not get any money. But he did have some good information. He didn't have as much as Sterling Colston did, but he did have some good information. So what I wanted to show you this, so that to encourage you that whether you had Cherokee ancestors or not, or maybe you had some Cherokees and some non-Cherokees, that people all over the country had heard about this this money that they were giving the Cherokees, and tons, like I said, there were tons of people that applied that were rejected. So it's possible that you might have an ancestor that applied for this role that was rejected, but they would have answered the questions that were on the application as well. So you might want to check that out. And then this is just the affidavit where people are saying that they know him, and this particular gentleman says he's known him for 40 and 45 years. So they've known him for a long, long time. Okay, so now we're going to move forward and look at the date. We've got June 22nd, 1910. So now they're going to start making payment to the approved individuals. And I know this article is faded. I've got it transcribed here. But as usual, as in the at the time of the Dawes allotments, there's some people that are trying to be troublemakers and get the money. So here in Tahlequah, after waiting 59 years, immigrant Eastern Cherokee Indians who came from Alabama and Georgia are today receiving money. Now, I didn't tell you this, but the Court of Claims, after they approved this money, they also said the government should have done this back in the 50s, 1850s. They didn't. So now we're going to add on the accrued interest from that time period, which amounts to over $4 million. Now, this was in 1910. The first check issued was given to Mrs. Alice Wilson of Talala for $110. 6,000 people are here, including many grafters. The Indians have to form a line before a window. Numbers are issued in advance to avoid confusion. Grafters have been caught selling bogus number. The sheriff has appointed 25 special deputies. So here we are in June of 1910, when they're now making payments to all of the eligible people that applied. Okay, now here's the fun stuff. Now, if y'all think anything has changed, this will bring it back to reality. The following is a statement of the Eastern Cherokee money and expenditures. The total amount allowed, remember we saw this figure earlier, $1,111,000, $284.79. The interest at 5% from June the 12th, 1838. Remember what that is? That's the first removal date to March of 15th, 1910. 5% interest of this. $3,987,076.38 for a total of $5,098,361.08. Okay, but then here's how they're dividing it up. The Court of Claims awarded to the attorneys for the Eastern Cherokees a sum equal to 15% of the amount of the recovery. So look at all these people and how much money each one of them got. Paid 1906. This is 1906 money. Look at this fella down here, Robert L. Owen, $208,000, $738.25. He got way more than any of these people. Now that's unusual. And then it says, paid by the Secretary of Interior over the protest of the Eastern Cherokees to Smith, Nogle, and Kirby, attorneys for the Cherokee Nation. They got $148,000. So remember, this is $5 million. The total amount paid to the attorneys was $888,800. That's just the attorneys. Now they're going to pay Guion Miller. The cost of identifying the beneficiaries by Guion Miller, he was given $88,000. And then for his expenses, he was given $15,000. So now it's not just $888,000 with Guion Miller's amount. Now we're almost $1 million is taken out before any of the eligible individuals are going to get paid. So after you take out the attorneys and the Guion Miller, his payment, $4,105,810.77 is left. So think about that for a minute. Okay, so we know who Guion Miller was. Who in the world is Robert L. Owen, and why does he get $208,000? Well, he was born in 1856 in Lynchburg, Virginia. In 1877, he graduated from Washington and Lee University with a degree of Masters of Arts. And then right after he graduated, he comes out here and teaches in the school in Salina. He teaches the Cherokees. While he's out here, he is admitted to the bar. And then from 1885 to 1889, he serves as the federal Indian agent for the 5 civilized tribes. So they asked him, evidently, to work on the claims, and he worked on the case for 7 years. After statehood, he's elected as a Democratic senator. Notice how long he serves, 20 years almost. And he dies in 1947 in Washington, D.C., and he's buried at the Spring Hill Cemetery in Lynchburg, Virginia, where he was born. So he has been working on that case for 7 years. So I do not know how they added up, figured out how much each one of those lawyers got, but he obviously got the biggest share of that money as far as all the lawyers go. Now, that's basically the end of my presentation. However, you might want to add this to the bibliography. I failed to include it, and I apologize about that, but I can leave this slide up for a few moments if you want to turn your handout over and add this to the end of the bibliography. This is just another resource that will be of use to you if you're trying to find whether, now this particular book will only list the people who were admitted to the roll. The index that is on fold 3 includes everybody who applied, whether they were admitted or not. But the actual books on the bibliography and this book will only cover the individuals who were admitted. And as you can see on most of the titles, those are going to be dedicated Cherokee resources. And I don't know if if Crystal has those resources at the Muskogee Library. They do have them at the Tulsa Library. So, but bottom line is, you really, unless you want to see the actual Brennan or Chapman rolls, everything you really need is on fold 3. So both the index and the applications. So you should be able to find those on fold 3. But if you are interested, then those other resources are supplemental type resources.
Okay. Thank you. Crystal, you've come back on. Can you tell us whether or not you've got the microfilm at the library? Whoops.
Okay, well,
There she is.
She may not need to,
Yeah.
she doesn't really have to have the microfilm. She might just, y'all
We
have
do
fold 3.
we do have the microfilm.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have the microfilm for the Miller applications.
Okay. But y'all also have fold 3 as well.
Yes, we do have all 3.
Okay. Okay.
Very good. So you can research it either way then.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kathy. That was excellent. Just excellent. Thank you so much.